Okay, here's the vision of Evangelism Strategies International, or ESI. And there's a great graphic of an eye with the globe in the middle. And that's because we have our eye on the whole world. We want to mobilize whole churches in the world to evangelize this world. That's our vision. And here's beautiful New Zealand. These are the regions of New Zealand. Jesus' command was to sow each region in New Zealand with the gospel, either spreading it or proclaiming it for the glory of God. We get that from Acts 1:8. His plan is to use all the Christians in each region to do this, not just people with the gift. It's definitely God's will from the Word of God that all Christians are active in evangelism. And of course, we're called and commanded to evangelize our Jerusalem first, which for churches in each region is their region. Not just to sow it once, their region, but to sow it repeatedly so that non-Christians get to hear the gospel multiple times. In Taranaki, there will be leaders of churches who want to lead by example in evangelism, and we really applaud that. And in so doing, make it possible to mobilize all the people in their church for evangelism. We found that when leaders lead by example, that the rest of the people just follow. Well, let's say there's 10% of pastors in Taranaki who will be like this. We don't know what the actual percentage will be, but let's just say it's 10%. There will also be churches whose leaders aren't ready to lead in evangelism, but there are people in their churches who want to obey Jesus in his command to evangelize the world. So let's say 90% of churches are in this group where the leaders can't lead by example, but there's people in the church who actually really want to do evangelism. What do we do then? Well, how are we going to identify and train the people and their pastors in both groups? In other words, how do we find which churches and which pastors are in each group? Well, that's a good question. Well, in 2015, we are inviting churches in Taranaki to host what we call the 12 Lost Truths conferences. These are great conferences which will show churches what they need to do to evangelize their region. These conferences are usually held on a Saturday, 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. ESI will work in-house and closely with the people and pastors of the 10% to help them mobilize all their people. So if a pastor puts up his hand and says, "I want to lead by example," we really put a lot of effort into those churches. For the people in the 90% of churches who want to activate in evangelism, we will meet with them once a month in a central Taranaki location, say New Plymouth, for example. What would happen at these monthly meetings? Well, we'd stoke the fires of evangelism, obviously, in the hearts of the people who come. There's a great little graphic where we want to blow on those fires that they have, the desire to evangelize their region. We'd encourage each other. That would be incredibly important to do that when these meetings happen. We'd pray for each other. Don't you love that picture of that woman, a real mighty woman of God praying there? We'd inspire each other. We'd inspire each other to be more loving and gracious with the delivery of the gospel, more uncompromising, more accurate, more skillful with dealing with the non-Christians that we give the gospel to. In other words, to be able to answer their questions and deal with them graciously and lovingly. We'd inspire each other for stuff like that. There will be relevant, practical, quality, meaty Bible teaching on topics related to evangelism at these meetings. They will not have the effect of putting people to sleep like that photo. In fact, they will definitely not be boring. Guarantee that. We'd build friendships and relationships so that people know they are not alone. So as the Christians in Taranaki are about evangelizing all the non-Christians in Taranaki, they'd have a sense they're not doing this alone, but they're linked with a great network of other churches and people. The people who came to these meetings would be given the option of using a variety of tools to communicate the gospel, not just those developed by ESI. We'd send the people back to their churches equipped, inspired, encouraged, and skilled, able to do evangelism themselves and able to teach others how to do evangelism. In other words, we create people who could actually disciple other people in evangelism. Who would do the coaching at these monthly meetings? Well, initially the coaching would be done by Renee Tobin, the Assistant Leader of Evangelism Strategies International. That's her with her husband Chris. Renee is already well known to a number of leaders, so is proven, endorsed, and accepted. Renee will be looking to train and equip local churches so that they can become coaches themselves. That is to say, she'll be discipling Taranaki evangelists so they can actually continue to disciple other people in Taranaki with evangelism. With ESI and the churches of Taranaki working together, we can obey Jesus' command to evangelize Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts of the earth. The same plan and pattern applies to every region in New Zealand. Let it be so. Okay, if you want to contact us, there's our contact details, and we'd love to get this rolling, kick it off, and see the region of Taranaki evangelized. Wouldn't that be great? Okay, God bless you. Thanks for listening.